Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome, everyone. It is Tuesday, Tariff Tuesday. Tariffs kicking into place. What does that mean? Will it be economic Armageddon? Well, not so much. Look, here's the thing about tariffs. They are a tool. I know some of this just going into the show here sounds like you know some of this stuff. But there is this narrative of apparent confusion as to why this stuff is being done. And, of course, it depends on the country. When there's discussion about tariffs with China, it's because of import-export discrepancies. When it comes to Mexico, it's drugs and border security, illegal immigration. It's all border issue. Same thing with the Canadians. It's a border issue. The number of illegals that have crossed over the border from, I think it was 23 to 24, or maybe 22 to 23, was a massive spike. There's a real problem there, and the Canadians have absolutely no problem allowing people to come across the border. And by the way, the country that has the highest number of Iranians outside of Iran is Canada. And given they are the number one exporter of terrorism, while clearly that doesn't mean everyone who is Iranian or left Iran to go to Canada. Many people left for the reasons to get away from being under the authority of the exporter of terrorism, the number one in the world. But it certainly demonstrates that if somebody who was, let's say, from Iran, and I don't know, maybe even somebody that was sent in order to assassinate the president of the United States. We know Iran has not made a secret about wanting to do that. Going through Canada would be an easy pathway, as would Mexico. And so these tariffs are for the purpose of, it's leverage, just like everything else with Trump. If people would take the, and I know most of you understand this, but if people would just take the time to understand that everything Trump does, it's for the betterment of the country and the people in this country. Now, that doesn't mean it's always going to work, and intelligent people may have disagreeing beliefs as to whether or not his version of a better country is the same as yours. But I think most people believe that a more secure border to the north and south, that is a pretty important thing. And if we have a secure border versus an unsecure border, that is better for us as a country. Most other countries realize this. And up until some time ago, the United States, collectively, we all agreed with this. Democrats were on board. I mean, I remember Hillary Clinton running for the U.S. Senate in blue state New York, railing against giving driver's license to illegals and talking about the need to secure the border. This isn't something that has always been partisan as an issue. It's something that has just turned this way as Democrats shifted to the party of open border and crime, and those two things go hand in hand to a large degree. So we hear about the tariffs and the cost of the tariffs. Yeah. But there's a number of reasons that here's how Trump sees this stuff. It's to some degree a win-win. If Mexico, for example, or Canada wants to eliminate the tariffs, which clearly they don't like, then just start enforcing the border. It's like you have a neighbor, they have dogs, and the dogs are constantly getting through the fence and tearing up your backyard. And you go over, hey, could you do something about, oh, yeah, we'll take care of it, and they never take care of it. And eventually they quit answering your calls, they quit answering the door when you come over. But you have these dogs are always coming over the fence or through the fence where they shoot a hole in the fence. It's quite aggravating, isn't it? Not very neighborly. Well, that's how these two countries have treated us when it comes to the border. And frankly, It's a little off-putting that we have people in this country acting as if we're the ones who are doing something wrong because we simply want them to stop treating us like a bad neighbor. We don't ask a lot. In fact, I think Trump summed it up pretty nicely when last week, I believe it was, he said, we just wanted to be treated. No, I tell you who it was. It was regarding tariffs. It was the Treasury Secretary on with Brett Baer. He said, we just want to be treated equally. That's it. That's reasonable, isn't it? We want to be treated equally when it comes to economic issues. We want to be treated equally when it comes to trade issues, which fall under economic issues. We want to be treated equally when it comes to securing the border. Now, of course, we do have a bit of an advantage when it comes to the border because it's not like we really have to do a whole lot to stop people from trying to go illegally live in Mexico or illegally live in Canada. So arguably, yes, they do have a greater burden because it is a problem from their countries. It is from Canada. People are coming into this country illegally, and it's from Mexico. Now, that doesn't mean the origin is of Canada or the origin is of Mexico. Clearly, that's not always the case, but they use these two countries oftentimes in order to get into the United States. So, yeah, they do have a disproportionate amount of burden when it comes to the border issue. But that's the way it is. And we do what we can. And to Trump's credit, it's not as if he says we're going to just continue to leave an open border and expect you to do the heavy lifting. I mean, Hegseth just announced thousands of troops going to the southern border. Now, the other upside is you get, on one hand, compliance, which means border security. On the other hand, if you have a number, you've got companies that are based in one of these two countries, they may decide to just move here to the United States so they don't have to worry about the tariffs. Hence this story. Report, Honda moving Civic production from Mexico to Indiana in response to Trump's tariffs. These are American jobs. Is this a bad thing? Is this why we're going to complain about this? Fans of Honda cars, prepare to start your engines. The Japanese manufacturing giant will produce the next generation Civic Hybrid in the U.S. state of Indiana rather than Mexico to sidestep tariffs on one of its top-selling car models, a report Monday claims. Reuters reporter Maki Saraki cites three people familiar with the matter to state Mexico was initially chosen because rising costs were making it tough to produce the car in Indiana and Canada. The outlet continued that now that has changed since Trump returned to the White House and set about protecting American jobs and American workers. The change underscores how manufacturers are scrambling to adapt to Trump's proposed 25% tariffs on goods from Mexico and Canada. By the way, this is one of the reasons why Mexico and Canada does not like this plan. Because you end up with manufacturers saying, well, we're just going to go there. The business climate is friendlier if we just go there. Now, some people don't like the process. Oh, but this isn't how you treat your allies. Really? Because this is how they treat us. This is the aspect of all of this that gets underreported. The United States has been the whipping boy of all of our partners for generations now. And listen, I don't blame them for it. They've been allowed to do it. They've been invited to do it by previous presidents. Because previous presidents are always, well, we can afford it. Some have a more socialistic view of redistribution of wealth and do it for those purposes. But, I mean, if you are a country and, you're going to protect yourself, you're going to put tariffs in place because this is what other countries do. They put tariffs on items that will come out of other countries in order to help the industries within their country. The exact same thing Trump is doing here, which, of course, dual purpose. It's always, at the same time, again, the border. This idea, however, that it's just like, up until now, everyone has had no problems. The United States has never had to deal with any of these other countries taking advantage or using leverage over us or taking advantage of the generosity of past presidents. And then Trump comes along and he's just stingy and mean. That ain't what's happening, folks. Trump is looking out for us. Now, there is a reality here. Just like there's a reality when you increase taxes on a corporation. And that reality is it can cause the price of the product to go up. When it comes to tariffs, that's the point. It is to make it uncomfortable economically to continue to either not enforce the border, to allow fentanyl to pour across the border, or for the businesses themselves to continue to do business in those countries as opposed to the United States. It's a means to an end. Does it mean it's always going to work? Nope. Does it mean that it's going to sometimes? Yep. But the one thing that we can know, as long as you're able to, kick the Trump derangement syndrome out of your mind, this is all done for one reason. And it's to improve the condition of life here in the United States for Americans. And frankly, we have become so accustomed to having presidents that don't do that, I think it makes some Americans just flat out uncomfortable. Well, I don't really know. It seems kind of selfish. He's our president. The other countries, they have their own. And they have certainly taken advantage of the generosity of previous presidents. So we shouldn't feel too bad. And finally having a president of the United States that says, you know what? We're not going to play that game anymore. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today it'll be rainy and breezy throughout the day with a high near 60. Tonight rain and then changing over to snow with a low around 30. Snow accumulations of less than a half of an inch are possible. For your Wednesday, a 50% chance of snow before 8 a.m. and then mostly sunny with a high near 40. And on Thursday, partly sunny with a high near 51.
Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. I'm trying to think of Canadian and Mexican car manufacturers. Oh, it's zero, LOL. They are hubs, however. In fact, as of 2023, Mexico is the 7th largest producer in terms of being a hub, having like Kia. And, of course, we just had the story. Honda has announced that they are going to move their manufacturing facility to Indiana because of the tariffs. Canada, I think, is 12th or 13th in the world. 10% of Canada's GDP is manufacturing vehicles, like Ford, Honda. So you can see why it is that they've got some concerns about this. Incidentally, what goes hand in hand with this is the desire by Trump to reduce regulations and cut corporate taxes. That's added bonus. So you think about, and companies like Honda, who are already citing tariffs to move here, they are not blind to the fact that in addition to that, Trump wants to lower the cost of doing business once they're here by way of lowering taxes, which of course means lowering the cost of the vehicle. So you get the 25%. Now, some could argue that they will just utilize that as a way to make an extra profit. But let's say for a moment that is the case. So we have all those jobs here that weren't here before, paying revenue into the Treasury that wasn't here before, and all of the people who are earning a paycheck are paying taxes. I mean, this is just, it is a winning formula. And that's the reason that, Trump utilizes it. There's another good news story. Trump announcing another major private sector investment into the U.S. at the White House yesterday. Taiwanese chip manufacturer investing $100 billion into the United States. Wall Street Journal reporting that Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing is making the investment over a 4-year period. The investment would be used to build out cutting-edge chip-making facilities such as expansion that would advance a long-pursued U.S. goal to regrow the domestic semiconductor industry after manufacturing fled largely to Asian countries in recent decades. You see how this works? This is not bad news. This is good news. And this is where, sadly, a lot of Americans really deny themselves the ability to just be a little bit happy and go, oh, yeah, I hate Trump. I think he's horrible. But, hey, at least this is happening. You just doesn't deny yourself because of hatred, consumed with hate. Whatever happened to the whole love Trump's hate thing, right? Remember that? Where it was the anti-Trump people were out there virtue signaling that they weren't going to let their obsession and hatred of Trump stop them from experiencing the good things in life and loving America and the things that are great about America, that whole love Trump's hate thing. It almost as if that was just another virtue signaling line of BS. You want a snippet of our friendly neighbors to the north that just want to be good neighbors? This is the leader of Ontario responding to the tariffs, which, by the way, I think we need to context this properly. The tariffs have kicked in because Canada refuses to comply with the request to treat us equally when it comes to, among other things, border security. This is on them. This is on the Canadians. Yet here is the response.
We are the largest purchaser of alcohol in the world. We buy over 3,600 products from 35 states. I talked to the governor of Kentucky and Mitch McConnell. Don't touch our bourbon. I'm going after absolutely everything. And I don't want to. We keep the lights on to 1.5 million homes and manufacturing in New York, in Michigan, and in Minnesota. If he wants to destroy our economy and our families, I will shut down the electricity going down to the U.S. And I'm telling you, we will do it. It's unfortunate. I would rather ship you more electricity, ship you more critical minerals. I want to ship you more energy, more potash to keep your farmers going, and uranium that you use for your nuclear power. It comes through from Saskatchewan over to Ontario, and it's going to be a massive, massive problem.
Oh, gosh. Maybe Canadians aren't as friendly as we thought. A little footnote lesson here. The states like New York that he cited, Minnesota, Michigan, that overregulate energy producers to the point that they can't survive in those particular states, and so they have to import energy from Canada. That's why you don't do that. Because then you become reliant on them. They hold leverage over you. They can blackmail you. They can do what you just heard there from Ontario. If you demand that we enforce our border, that we share with you, we'll just turn all your power off. That, by the way, is the exact same leverage and threat Putin has used over Europe, particularly Germany. That's why you don't do that. I love also how the one item that he cited was bourbon. Like that was, oh, you're going to take away our bourbon? We'll cut off your power. The way this, if it even gets covered, will be presented, of course, is that they have no choice whatsoever. It's Donald Trump's fault. Well, they do have a choice. Enforce the border. Border security. That's the choice. This is how badly they don't want to do it. Coming up, Chuck Todd did a podcast interview. I love how these folks who have been largely responsible for the Joe Biden propaganda are now calling out the propaganda as if they weren't the ones spreading it. This time it's about his family. Anyone who pays any attention to the way that the Bidens treat each other know that they are a Jerry Springer mess. All of this media presentation that, oh, Joe Biden, oh, you hear this. Claire McCaskill is one of the worst. He just loves his family so much. Really? Have you seen how these people treat each other? Well, apparently Chuck Todd is now speaking out on this, saying that the mythology of Joe Biden as a family man is all bull blank. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. KSGF.com. You can register to try and win tickets. Sticks, special guest Kevin Cronin of REO Speedwagon Live, Thunder Ridge Nature Arena. That will be Saturday, June 7th. Coming up in 2 minutes after traffic, Congressman Eric Burleson. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today it'll be rainy and breezy throughout the day with a high near 60. Tonight rain and then changing into snow with a low around 30. For your Wednesday, we'll see a 50% chance of snow before 8 a.m. and then mostly sunny with a high near 40. And looking ahead to Thursday, it'll be partly sunny with a high near 51.
Congressman Burleson joins us this morning. I'd like to just out of the gate get your thoughts on the ongoing developments with Ukraine. Obviously, Friday, Trump announcing that at this point he's going to put a pause on funding and military help, supplies and so forth to Zelensky until he, I guess, feels as if Zelensky actually wants to not just keep the war going. I think there's been a real change in messaging here from everyone seemed to be on the same page about ending this thing, and Zelensky just flat out saying he doesn't want a peace deal, he doesn't want a ceasefire, and so Trump has subsequently said, well, okay, then we're just going to put a stop to facilitating this never-ending war. Your thoughts on how all this plays out, and then does Congress have any funding play in this?
Yeah, I think that we saw on world display someone who really failed his country. I think it was really sad to see, because I think that we were this close to just ending this war, having a peace deal, and really walking away with a win-win situation. But the pettiness of Zelensky in that interview, and you have to watch the entire interview
right.
to really get the context, because Trump was basically the adult in the room until it was clear that there wasn't going to be anything that could be done, and that Zelensky could not be reasoned with. I thought it was, I think, and I've spoken with so many people who were upset because they saw the cliffs. They were upset at Trump and JD
Right.
Vance. And then when they watched the previous the first few minutes of the meeting, the whole thing, they changed their mind. So I think that, at the end of the day, I think Vladimir Putin is a tyrant. He's, ex-KGB. He's a dictator. He's an evil individual who doesn't care about the lives of his people and all the things, right? But unfortunately, Zelensky is an idiot, and I hope that he course corrects, changes his mind, comes back, and humbly asks for help in the peace deal.
Well, and then in addition to the previous 50 however minutes of video that a lot of people did not see, you had a couple weeks prior Marco Rubio relaying an interaction with Zelensky that he and Vance had. You had I believe it was the Treasury Secretary also noting that this is not the first time Zelensky has done something like this, the bait and switch, the yes, let's sign this, and then not signing it, and then, okay, well, we'll do it in Munich, and then showing up not doing it, then showing up at the White House. And so this isn't like it's the first time he did it, and I can understand. I mean, frankly, Trump spent the vast majority of that interaction being much more generous than I would have, given that Zelensky, that was the third time that he said that, yes, let's get together and sign this thing, only to not do it.
Yeah, I mean, he seems to operate based on emotions and theatrics, which is no surprise because he comes from theater world and from the entertainment industry. That's his background. But
Now,
being on Vanity Fair magazine does not help you win a war.
That's the thing that's just so crazy about this. The people who are mad at Trump, like, what are you wanting out of this? There never even was any talk of peace until Trump came along. Zelensky is the one who said he doesn't want, this ceasefire deal, and he just wants the money to keep coming. If you had told me 20 years ago that the Democrat Party would be just beating the drumbeat of war whenever peace is an option, it's crazy to me.
Mm-hmm. It is. And let's put it in perspective too. And we're talking $200 billion that we've already sent over. More than that, really. We're going to have to probably write some bigger checks when we get to the point in which the war is over and the rebuilding stage begins. And so, if you to put that in perspective, the state of Missouri, our annual budget is like in all, federal and state, and through like other revenue, it's like, was it 50 billion a year? So you're talking 4 times the annual budget for the entire state of Missouri we've thrown at another country, right? Like we can't do that around the world, obviously. So this is just it's too bad that he didn't see the opportunity. But all he had to do, in my opinion, all Zelensky had to do was show up, smile, nod, and say, when do we sign and what's for lunch? That's all he had to do. And this would have been over, but instead he wanted to relitigate, try to one up and get more out of the United States in front of the cameras, right? Leverage Trump and leverage our, the United States in front of the world on camera. And that's not something Trump is going to allow.
It's amazing to me, these people that miscalculate Trump. And I referenced just a couple of weeks ago, though much different scale, but you had the governor of Maine trying to take on Trump when it comes to girls being forced to compete against boys. You have Zelensky thinking that he's going to be the one person that manhandles Trump in front of the, like, what? And I wonder how much of that, though, the world has created in him. This is a guy that has really never been told no, at least publicly. He's been praised. He's been worshipped. I mean, he was able to show up with an actual Nazi in Canada, and they gave him a standing ovation for it while he pumped his fist in the air, standing next to a Nazi. I mean, he's just had this charmed life where it's almost like he gets to cosplay war. He never is told no. There's never anyone that says, okay, we need to stop this thing. And when somebody finally does, again, you would think stopping it would be a priority for him. Yet he's the one person saying, no, let's keep it going. And I just wonder if this is a beast that's been created by the world.
Yeah, that's a really good way to describe it. He's cosplaying being a president.
What-
It's pretty, but it's at the end of the day, that what's sad is that the Ukrainian people,
Yeah.
really good human beings, are being slaughtered, and he could have taken this deal or a deal similar to
Yeah.
this a year ago, saved hundreds of thousands of lives, but here we are.
We're talking
He's
with
still
yeah.
playing theatrics.
We're talking
Go
with Congressman Burleson. There's something that we have talked about in terms of the just out of control economic issues that we're facing, particularly when it comes to Medicaid. And I haven't had a chance to sit fully through it, but I saw I had a video that my wife had sent me, and it was a member of Congress talking about what a drop in the bucket some of the savings that we're focusing on are when it comes to the ultimate problem. And that is true, but it doesn't mean that Doge in particular isn't important. I mean, just because it isn't the overriding economic issue of the day doesn't mean that we shouldn't have concerns about it. But I've just realized, and I know you do too, because it's something that, well, you deal with even amongst some of your colleagues, this apparent lack of recognition to the severity of this problem we're in, and the inevitable economic collapse if something significant is not done.
Yeah, that's right. There's a think tank called Epic, and they've just crunched some numbers that these are a bunch of economists, that the United States, we're 36 trillion. We have basically our debt limit, like not what was set by Congress, but what will happen before we hit a debt spiral. The most that we possibly could take out at the current GDP rate is, they said about 12 trillion more. So we're at the end here. J.D. Vance gave a speech to members of Congress, and he said this was once a problem on the horizon, and now it's at the windshield. And so we have to cut spending. And so what's unfortunate is that you've got fiscal hawks like myself and other members of Freedom Caucus who have been trying to do this for the last 2 years. I've been screaming about this when I was a state legislator trying to pass balanced budget amendments. But here we are. And I'm just thankful that we have Doge, because they're coming in, they're using executive power. They are using, a provision that's called impoundment. And so they're trying to press that through the courts and get a favorable ruling that the president has the authority to not spend every dollar that's been appropriated. And I hope that, they're putting a lot on this, they're gambling a lot on this winning this court case. But I think that the sad part is that they can't rely on Congress. Yeah. Congress does not have the spine or really the work ethic to do what Doge is doing. And that's really sad. So we're going to come about our budget deal for the rest of the year. They're going to do a clean, quote unquote, clean CR, continuing resolution till the end of the year. And they're gonna waive the required 1% cuts. They're gonna do that, and then
I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I remember us talking about that automatic 1% cut if something isn't done, and that was sort of sold to the fiscally responsible people like you that, hey, here's a mechanism so you don't have to worry about this, and now they're just going to waive it.
Right. I said this last night to somebody. I was like, it was Thomas Massey and Jim Jordan, Warren Davidson, some of the conservatives that have been here for a long time. They bought that hook, line, and sinker, and it made me kind of think, am I wrong here? Because when the FRA was coming through, the bill that put that automatic 1% cut in, there were other members like Andy Biggs and Chip Roy who were saying, nope, don't take the bait. That is not. And I decided to vote no. I voted no, and I was in conflict at that moment because I thought, what am I? Now I look back and think, man, I'm glad I voted against that. because it didn't work anyway,
What a
right?
joke.
So
What a sad joke.
they put that 1% cut, automatic 1% cut in as a sweetener to try to get conservatives to vote for this garbage continuing resolution 2 years ago. And here we are at the very moment when it might go into effect, they're going to put language in to waive it.
Jeez. Hey, I want to go back real quick because somebody had sent in a text regarding it, back to the Zelensky thing, and what seemed to be acknowledgement from some Democrats, one U.S. senator, that they had spoken with Zelensky before he went over to the White House and encouraged him to kick the peace deal out the door. That, to me, seems like a pretty significant deal, though it's not getting a tremendous amount of attention. Am I off base on that?
That some Democrats went to him and told him to kick it out the door?
Yeah, that they told him not to accept the fake peace. One, I forget which senator it was. I mean, he put on X that they met with Zelensky and told him not to accept the quote fake peace deal, and that just
Oh,
seems
wow.
that seems very significant. I think he's from Connecticut. I forget, somewhere on the East Coast. And then Susan Rice, evidently, there were about 3 or 4. Molly Hemingway had a write down on it, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I just didn't know if you had any insight on that. But that seems pretty significant to have open recognition by some Democrats that they torpedoed that peace deal.
I don't have any further information than what's in the news, and what
Yeah.
I've seen is that he was meeting with Democrats. In fact, that's what he generally, when he's
Right.
in town, that's his circle of influence is
Yeah.
like the Hollywood and the lefties and all the Democrats.
Yeah.
That's kind of his tribe.
Anything else before we let you go?
Nope. Today's the address.
Yep.
It is extremely late here in DC when we do this. It's like 9:00 at night.
Mhm.
I remember the first time doing it with Joe Biden. I thought, I'm going to fall asleep in this thing.
Why do they do it so late? I guess that's prime time out
Prime
there?
time, because in California it starts at 6.
Oh, okay,
I don't
got it.
But yeah, it's late for
California.
us.
All
So if
right.
you see me yawning, I don't stay up that late usually.
Well, Congressman Burleson, as always, appreciate it, and we'll talk with you next week.
All right. Thanks, Nick.
You bet. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Former NBC Meet the Press anchor Chuck Todd, who spent years covering for and defending Joe Biden, is now delivering a brutal opinion about the former president, calling him a craven political animal who's more concerned about his political career than his own family. During an appearance Sunday on Lincoln Project, co-founder Steve Schmidt's The Warning podcast, Todd delved into why the Democrats lost the 2024 election and what he perceives as the media's relationship with the second Trump administration. After decrying older politicians remaining in the leadership of the Democrat Party, Todd returned to Biden's role in the November election loss, saying, quote, Joe Biden should have never been there in the first place, right? Number one, he should not have run for president in 2020. He said, I completely got so angry at Joe Biden, the man, when I read the transcript of the Hunter Biden trial. And when I realized that not one, not two, but three Biden children, and I count Bo's wife, were all dealing with drug problems in 2018, and Joe Biden said now's the perfect time to run for president because who cares about our family? Now, it doesn't really amaze me. Chuck Todd did not know that until he read those transcripts. I understand the average person not knowing that. But for all the defending and the characterization of Joe Biden as this family man who, he always puts family first. Somehow this guy, the face of Meet the Press, didn't realize how this family treated one another until he read those transcripts. He said, I have to tell you something about Joe Biden. There's this mythology about Joe Biden that the man cared so much about his family. It's all bull blank. Todd said that Biden had created this myth over his 40-year career, that he was an incredible family man. Let's not dismiss the media's hand in helping create that myth. How many times did we hear from trash like Claire McCaskill on an NBC network that the only reason Republicans were ever attacking Joe Biden is because he loved his family so much? That he just cares so much about his family. That's the only reason that Republicans went after him. I mean, we constantly heard the media almost as if it were a given that, well, this is just Joe Biden being a family man. Everyone knows that Joe Biden is a father first and president second. Chuck Todd revealing that all along he knew that this wasn't the case, or at least until that Hunter Biden trial. Yet, I mean, it's just a further bit of evidence that these people in the media cannot be believed. The one thing that does surprise me to some degree is the openness with which they admit they knew what they were saying were all of it was lies. As they openly talk, now they don't, they don't hold themselves accountable for it. They don't say, listen, I know I was lying, but you got to understand I was being paid to do this, or, well, I just, really realized how bad Trump was. They pretend as if they weren't part of the problem. But why hold yourself accountable if no one else does? Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Hey, we got happy hour coming up. Maybe we should let's check with Houston and see if we have an extra pair of the Styx tickets to
Okay.
register
Yeah.
people. Now you can go to ksgf.com, register to win tickets or try to win. See Styx, which special guest Kevin Cronin of REO Speedwagon. That's going to be at Thunder Ridge Nature Arena Saturday, June 7th. We'll see if we can arrange for an extra pair to have for a giveaway at Retro Metro. 4 to 6, our happy hour this Friday. Tariff Tuesday. Tariffs going into effect. China 10%, quarter on Canada and Mexico for a number of different reasons. Largely fentanyl issue, drug issues, border issues, which those do go hand in hand. It is amazing to me the inconsistency of some people that will demand that taxpayers give more in order to help fight fentanyl, unless it's in the form of a tariff. Then all of a sudden we're concerned. I think we know why this is. Because the tariff is something they associate with Trump. So all of a sudden, fighting the fentanyl crisis in this country isn't that big of a deal. Now, if some nonprofit says, well, we need billions of dollars to set up all of these different clinics all over the country in order to help people who have become victims of the fentanyl, well, they'll support that, which is a little too late. I mean, it's not too late, I suppose, but wouldn't one argue that it's better to stop it before it starts? Instead of trying to fix it on the back end once the fentanyl makes it across into the United States and all of these drugs make it into the United States that are, originally manufactured in China and then sent over to Mexico to come up across our border, doesn't it just make sense to just prevent it from getting here in the first place instead of leaving a border open, not taking steps to prevent it from coming here so then people get addicted to it and then we have to try to fix them from the addiction? It just seems to me cutting it off before it starts is a much easier way. Much like negotiations, these other countries are going to respond. I suspect that the people in the media and anti-Trump people are going to be like, well, see what happened now? Yes, this is what happens. Just like with negotiations, the back and forth, this is not uncommon. The only thing, again, that's uncommon is the fact that the United States has been the whipping boy for so many of these countries when it comes to this issue. It's not as if there aren't tariffs or, a form of taxes on the products that come out of the United States and go to other countries. We're just joining the game to a degree that is on par with the way that we've been treated. And the media will go to great lengths to explain that this could cost the, price of items to go up. Yes, that's true. It would be nice if they also explain that every time someone talked about raising income tax or raising corporate taxes. It works the same way. You increase the cost of doing business, that cost gets passed along. While Kamala Harris was running for president, running around talking about jacking up taxes on corporations in the U.S., I don't remember a single story explaining the impact that has on the consumer. Do you? Boy, Trump wants to utilize tariffs in order to increase quality of life here in the United States as the end goal. Boy, they pound that message away as hard as they can, don't they? Coming up, there's been a shift in approach regarding the Springfield School Board election, and that is the Greene County Republicans, for the very first time, issuing endorsements. We'll talk about that and the significance of it coming up. Weather in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today it'll be rainy and breezy throughout the day with a high near 60. Tonight rain and then changing over to snow with a low around 30. For your Wednesday, we'll see a 50% chance of snow before 8 a.m. and then mostly sunny with a high near 40. And looking ahead to Thursday, partly sunny skies with a high near 51.
I want a great homeloan.com. All of your home loan needs, refinancing needs. Even if you already have a plan in place, second opinions never hurt. In fact, second opinions can help. You're going to find one of three things. Either you can get a better deal, or you are already getting the best deal, or you can get the same deal. Whether it's the knowledge or the availability of something better for you, you come out a winner. The Carrickers, their team, they're fantastic people. It's who I use. I've used on a number of different occasions, not just for the home loan, but for refinancing. And reverse mortgages are something that they can help you with as well. If you don't know how that works, they can explain that to you. May not be for you, may be the perfect thing for you. Whatever it is, in the capacity of home loans, they are your go-to folks, even if it's your second opinion. And it all starts at iwantagreathomeloan.com because you do. Greene County Republican Party issuing endorsements in the Springfield Public School Board race for the first time, endorsing Kelly Byrne, who is running for re-election, and Dave Myers, who is running as a first-time candidate. The other candidate, Sarah Huff, and Gail Smart declined to seek the committee's endorsement, stating their commitment to the nonpartisan nature of the race. This means they're lefties. The endorsements have sparked debate about the role of partisan politics in nonpartisan election, with concerns raised about outside influence from political action committees. Did you know that? Did you know about this massive debate that's going on right now in the community? This is a debate in their own mind because they want you to believe there's something wrong with this. There has never been such, in our lifetimes, And arguably, since education began in this country, public education, such a complete difference between the two political parties and their approach to education and children. I mean, look at what happened in the Senate last night, the United States Senate. Something as basic as saying that girls should not be forced to compete against boys, they shouldn't be forced to use restrooms with boys, they should not be forced to take showers with boys. Every single Democrat voted to not make that happen in the Senate. And when the House version passed, there were only 2 Democrats that supported girls in their vote. Prior to the Trump administration, the Biden years, we learned that memos were circulating around through FBI field offices to treat parents as if they're potential domestic terrorists, trailing them after school board meetings. You have a political party that supports putting pornography in school libraries, claiming that you are wanting to censor or ban books if you don't want third graders to have pornography. These are very big differences. While it doesn't mean that every left-winger necessarily supports pornography for kids and forcing girls to shower with boys and looking at parents who show up at school board meetings as domestic terrorists, it's pretty clear that that is the party in which that approach is housed. The Republican Party is not that party. Make no mistake about it, the attempt by candidates and the attempt by outfits like the News Leader in pushing this so-called bipartisan, or nonpartisan rather, this nonpartisan approach, they are trying to hide from you the truth. Why do you think it is that the Democrat Party isn't endorsing anyone? Because they know what people have figured out about their political party and education in this country. In fact, they have endorsed in a previous election, and you know what happened? Their candidates lost. One of them being Charles Taylor, the incumbent, which was he was expected just to sail through with ease. People have figured this out. And for a lot of people, even people that traditionally vote Democrat, when it comes to education, they don't want their third grader having pornography. They don't want schools attempting to, cover up any sort of gender confusion. They don't want to be seen as domestic terrorists if they just show up to a school board meeting and question what's going on with their child's education. They don't want this continued, soft approach on discipline in which all of the already, self-disciplined children, their education suffers because of this attempt to save, these bad apples that have no interest in learning whatsoever. There's a massive difference between the two parties and their approach. And this whole, everyone just needs to agree. We don't need division. All of the school board members we just need to agree on it. We need to unite. We need to send a message that we're all on the same page here. Well, if that's the case, why even have a school board? Why not just have one person dictate everything? If there is not supposed to be any division, if there's not supposed to be any diversity of thought, this too, United Springfield, is covered for left-wing politics. It is cover for utilizing the public schools to indoctrinate young people into political ideology. One of the reasons, I believe, and I don't, I'm not some expert. I don't spend my time going to Greene County Republican Party events. But what I do know has occurred in previous elections, because of the nonpartisan component to this. You've had lefties running around claiming that they're conservatives and getting elected. Bruner is an example of someone that in the previous election was showing up at these Republican Party events, pretending as if she's some Republican. And you had a lot of active Republicans that really, truly, genuinely believed that she was someone who was not a left-winger, only to find out, of course, that she is. So there's deceit. The left-wingers in the community that want to further infiltrate the schools and continue them down a complete path of failure and try to institute these, frankly, psychotic social programs of, convincing, some girl who's the victim of sexual assault or has autism that she needs to have sex change operations. They know that they cannot be exposed in that manner because they won't win. And as long as they aren't getting an endorsement from the Democrat Party, they can show up at the Green, county Republican events or whatever other sort of Republican event and get up and speak and have other so-called Republicans vouch for them. So I imagine the Republican Party in Greene County is wised up and thought, okay, we cannot allow this to continue to happen. If we are going to have left-wingers running around pretending as if they somehow have an association with the Republican Party, we need to actually identify whom it is that we support in these campaigns. So while left-wing outfits like the News Leader, who want to get the left-wingers elected to the school board, while they're going to portray this as somehow breaching what until now has been a nonpartisan race, the Republican Party really has had no choice. Because their label, while it may not be in advertising, in networking, has been falsely used by some of these candidates in the past to get elected. So if you don't want, or you want to hopefully, Springfield still, the left wing has a majority on the Springfield School Board. And as long as that continues to occur, do not expect things to get better. They're going to continue to get worse. Instead of moving towards the way of success, we're going to start looking more like a Baltimore, like a St. Louis, like a Kansas City when it comes to results. But hey, as long as everybody on the school board all votes the exact same way every time, that's what really matters, not the children's education. But can we all pat each other on the back and go to the cocktail parties and talk about how we are the ones who really care? It's just a matter of priorities. Kelly Byrne, Dave Myers, if you want a chance for children in the Springfield Public School District to, for things to be turned around and we can stop the decline that we continue to see, or if you like the direction of forcing girls to lose out on scholarships because they have to compete against boys, or having pornography in the classroom, or having, to shower with boys, whatever left-wing cause, parents, again, as domestic terrorists, then, you got a couple other candidates from which to choose. But this is not the Republicans sullying what otherwise are pure and clean elections above partisanship. This is this is just my assessment. A reaction to the left, who has falsely portrayed themselves through networking as being somehow conservative or Republican. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Streaming live, ksgf.com. Speaking of education, you can register to win Teacher's Lounge Pizza Party. Oh, you always hear about these. Win a pizza party for your class. That's not a pizza party for you. That's horrible. Then you're left cleaning things up, and it's just a mess, particularly with elementary school. Well, I guess pretty much any age. So this is something that we've done, teaming up with Godfathers, where you can register at ksgf.com, and if you win, then it's a pizza party for the Teacher's Lounge, or wherever it is you want, just away from the kids. So you can be just anybody who works within the school district, or maybe you know someone who works within the school district and you would like to nominate their school to win, you can do so over at ksgf.com. One of the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line messages noting that Judy Bruner, when she was principal at Central High, her mask was a BLM mask. And this is something that a lot of people who were students or other teachers at Central knew about, that she was utilizing COVID as a way to market what has been one of the most corrupt and biggest scams of an organization, BLM. I mean, even some within the movement have noted that this is just money wasted, going to buy mansions for activists and fancy cars and trips. Biggest scam. But when she's running for school board, she's going around to these Republican events. She's having people vow, oh, no, she's not one of those crazy lefties, no. And a lot of people believed it. I know that because I would hear from them. Well, now, wait a minute. She spoke at the local Republican this and that group and organization, whatever Republican organization it was. And why would they have her there if she was a left-winger? Well, I can't answer the why. But I can tell you now that the Greene County Republican Party is endorsing, to me it seems as if they have decided to no longer let left-wingers hijack their principles when it comes to education in order to get elected, only to Trojan horse their way in there and start voting in sync, in line, in step with all the other lefties without any diversity. Let's see here. All right, we've got an update from Pam Bondi on the Epstein files. I'll share that with you next. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today it'll be rainy and breezy throughout the day with a high near 60. Tonight rain and then changing over to snow with a low around 30. For your Wednesday, we'll see a 50% chance of snow before 8 a.m. and then mostly sunny with a high near 40. And looking ahead to Thursday, we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 51.
I was trying to figure out what the deal is, why I'm seeing Casey Anthony all over TV. I guess
She's on TikTok now.
Yeah, she's promoting a new video series on TikTok in which she intends to speak about legal advocacy issues as a proponent for the LGBT community and women's rights. I'm sure abortion, since she had a post-birth abortion, although she was found not guilty of it, of course. But they couldn't have a better advocate, I suppose. What do you do if you're like if I'm in the LGBT community? I'm like, hey, listen, maybe there are other ways you can help. This is not the way to help.
Yeah, maybe we could pick somebody else.
Yeah, we need people to answer phones. We need people to whatever it is they do. I don't even know, to be honest with you. But maybe a role that's not quite so public. Just think about that, perhaps, Casey Anthony. Bondi reveals FBI delivered what she says is a truckload of Jeffrey Epstein files. Meanwhile, the top bureau official has resigned. 2 FBI stories breaking yesterday. First, the New York field office's top agent, James Dennehy, resigned, claiming that he had been told he'd be fired if he didn't. Second, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that the Bureau had dropped off a truckload of Jeffrey Epstein files after she had set a hard deadline for their turnover. And now they're questioning the timing of this. And does his resignation have anything to do with the fact that they turned over this so-called truckload of evidence that they had been hiding up until now? This is the FBI. It's an organization that's not supposed to help cover up for criminals, but is supposed to track them down. This behavior is consistent. Incidentally, we've seen this before. That Nasser, I think that was his name, the physical therapist or doctor that worked with young female gymnasts and for years was sexually assaulting them, and the FBI knew about it. They knew about it. Just let it keep happening. So this isn't the first high-profile case in which at least one FBI field office covered for a sexual predator. Now, last night, she announced that she finally has these documents. U.S. Attorney Pam Bondi revealing the Department of Justice has received more Jeffrey Epstein files from the Federal Bureau of Investigation after the document release she touted last week fell flat. Speaking of Fox News host Sean Hannity, on Tuesday night, she confirmed that a truckload of Epstein files were delivered by the FBI after she gave the agency until 8 a.m. on Friday morning to deliver. She said the officials will go through the files as fast as we can while also being careful to protect Epstein's victims. I think this meant to say on Monday night because that's when she was on with Hannity. There are those of us that still recognize the reality that some of the most profound evidence may never be seen. It may be destroyed. If we are talking about people that are within the FBI that are as corrupt as at times we have seen it demonstrated, then there's a very good chance that they have even just kept this stuff off site so that they could use it for blackmail purposes or for protection. Should they ever find themselves in a bind, whether it's an individual person or a collaborative effort of people that are working and conspiring together in order to use it as protection. They find themselves in trouble with the law, and, oh, really? Guess what I have? This is the unfortunate burden that we as American people have when trying to figure out what is the truth in all of this. And you have a department, the FBI in this case, that has demonstrated that it's so absolutely corrupt and political, you just don't know what their motivation is. Best case scenario, in the name of justice, is that this is absolutely everything. And the decision was made, we're done covering this up. Here you go. Have at it. It could also be a real thumb in the eye of information that is ultimately incidental. And it's like, oh, fine, you want some files? We'll give you some files, so that they spend days, if not weeks, poring over them, only to come out and say there's nothing there, knowing how that's going to appear to Pam Bondi's office. And that would just be a way to really kick them while they're down. Because I think it goes without saying, what occurred last week with the Al Capone's vault scenario that played out, and this tease that there were, people thought there was going to be some pretty revealing stuff in there, and of course it turned out not to be true. I mean, the one person that probably was the most grateful because of the Zelensky blow up in the Oval Office was probably Pam Bondi on Friday, because it certainly took that off the radar. So we'll see. There are some bits of information that we know at least existed at some time, and that is recordings, be they video or audio recordings. Jeff Epstein had his whole place wired up so that he would have provable information about these individuals he sold girls to for the purposes of raping. Knowing that that exists, if that does not pop up, that tells us that that evidence is still being hidden somewhere, or it has been destroyed. And you know how these things play out sometimes. Oh, well, we lost it. We don't know where it is. They always seem, you notice that during the Biden years in particular, they always lose video, or they always lose audio, or they always lose emails that happen to cover very specific instances in which crimes may have been committed or cover-ups may have occurred. That wouldn't surprise me either. I would love to see justice served. I would love to see, as I think most Americans would, the people within law enforcement who are responsible for keeping this covered up, for them to pay severely. I would love the punishment to be so great that anyone who thought about participating in such activities in the future, or thought about covering it up for whatever reasons, would think to themselves, no way, not worth it. I saw what happened to the last person that did this. But I don't know. It's hard to believe that this information is going to get out. Just because of the people who are involved, or presumably involved. I mean, I think pretty much everyone understands and agrees that these are very powerful people we're talking about, and largely political, and that they would not stop at nothing to prevent this information from coming out. It's just, I don't know, that's a hard thing for me to swallow, but hey, who knows? One of the guests that President Trump is going to have at his address to Congress tonight is a girl that was severely injured when she was forced to compete in volleyball against a boy who spiked a ball into her face so badly it just, really did a tremendous amount of damage to her. And this is important for a number of reasons. One, to highlight the difference in the two political parties when it comes to the protection of girls and women, but also to show that there are victims here, because Democrats are still out there claiming that girls like this don't exist. In fact, there was a story, maybe this story here, John Hickenlooper, Democrat from Colorado, after he voted to block the bill in the Senate protecting girls from boys in sports, has said that this is just people trying to churn the social wars about something that really doesn't exist. We've gone beyond a Democrat Party that has tried to portray this as something that is moral and noble. They've gotten to the point now that they're claiming that girls don't even exist in this capacity. You don't exist to them. Your voices will not be heard. Your injustice will not be seen. The girls across this country that have filed lawsuits, the girls who have become victims, whether it is the exposure of male genitalia in a girl's locker room or being hospitalized because of the physical damage done by a boy who's allowed to play against them. All the Democrats, according to them, you just don't even exist. So much for hearing the victims. Get you the latest update on this here in just a couple of moments. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447 KSGF. Senate Democrats blocking GOP-led bill to ban male athletes from competing in women's sports. Senate Democrats voting unanimously to block a Republican-led bill Monday evening that would prohibit federally funded schools from allowing transgender athletes from participating in women's sports. That's men. In a party line vote, 51-45, Democrats filibustered the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act introduced by Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama. It fell short of the 60 votes needed to advance as Democrats dismissed it as a distraction. See, that's what you girls are. You're just a distraction. Protecting you. Protecting your safe spaces. Protecting your right to assemble with only other girls, protecting your safety. Even the United Nations published a report about the physical and emotional damage, largely physical, to girls who are forced to compete against boys, finding hundreds of instances. The so-called "there's no study that shows that that's true" can no longer be used because there is a status from the great United Nations at that. John Hickenlooper, a Democrat from Colorado, said Senator Tuberville is trying to churn the social wars about something that really doesn't exist. He's announcing that he will run for re-election in 2026, and despite his vote, he said he does not believe that men should be able to compete in women's sports if the other women object. But so this is his campaign. The way that he votes is separate from the way he campaigns. Oh, yeah, sure. No, I believe in protecting women. But when it really comes down to it, but they don't actually need the protecting because the situation doesn't exist, he claims. He said, I saw the ads. of the 2024 election, where Trump's campaign highlighted the issue. He went on to say, "I think that's the kind of ad that works once. I don't think it'll work again. It's an infinitesimally small group of people that are really trying to find their ways." Oh, I don't know, is he talking about the girls that need the protection here, or is he talking about the boys that need the protection to compete against girls if they want to? You know, at the same time, this is what moderate Dems hatch comeback plan that distances party from far-left politics and embraces patriotism. There was a group of Democrats that gathered in Virginia last month. And they, they're trying to figure out how to salvage their political party. There was an organization that brought this together called Third Way. It is a centrist-leaning Democratic think tank. A summary paper from the retreat, seen by the New York Post, stated, "Activist groups and progressive staffers push unpopular culture positions, making it seem like Democrats are more extreme than they actually are." The problem with that position is here you have every single Democrat U.S. senator voting in line with that extremism. And in the House version, every single Democrat except for 2 voted for it. So these positions of the extreme activist groups are in line with the way that the Democrat Party is voting. The document for the retreat noted that operatives and campaigns must remember that activist groups exist to promote their single issue and raise money around it, not to make Democrats electable. Well, apparently the Democrats did not read through that memo because they're doing the opposite. Can you imagine? The people who put this retreat together for Democrats, this Third Way organization, and they're like, all right, we got to figure out a way to save the Democrat Party as it is collapsing upon itself. And so they get everyone together and they have this weekend, this sort of coming to Jesus. And they're like, listen, guys, okay, you got to understand all these left-wing causes, pornography in school, open borders, all of this pushing trans stuff off on kids and defending boys who want to compete against girls. You got to understand, you cannot continue to vote this way. This is way out of line with the American people. You have to understand that the groups that push this stuff, they're just one issue people, but you cannot be like them because you will continue to lose. Now, I don't know how that weekend ended. I would suspect that they walked away, at least with the impression that, well, I think we at least got the message through, only to then, in the subsequent week, watch every Democrat vote against the Protection of Girls in Sports Act. They must be texting each other like, did this weekend not happen? Did I dream that weekend? Did we not have, what we thought was a weekend in which we communicated pretty clearly what the Democrats need to stop doing in order to remain somewhat relevant in the world today or in United States politics today? Because they just voted every one of them against girls. The summary listed about 20 key strategies to rebuild cultural and economic trust with the working class. Some of the highlights: Democrats focus too much on America's flaws like racism, sexism, inequality without acknowledging the country's progress and potential. Democrats need to embrace patriotism, community, and traditional American imagery. Avoid overly moralistic and condescending messages. Speak plainly and directly. Own the failures of the Democratic governance in large cities and commit to improving local government. Now, the problem with all these recommendations is that's not who the Democrats are. I mean, there's a lot to enjoy here, but I have to say one of my favorites is own your failures at running cities. So the Democrats are supposed to shift from pretending as if they've run cities in a manner that improves the quality of life. Like, just admit it and ask them to vote for you anyway. Just be like, oh, yeah, we know we've run this city into the ground generation after generation, but, what are you going to do, vote Republican? Third Way Public Affairs exec Matt Bennett told Politico, in the wake of this election, when it became so evident that the things that the left was doing and saying deeply hurt Harris and down-ballot Democrats, a lot of people are looking to us, not just Third Way, but the moderates in the party, and saying, we got to do it your way because the other way ain't working. Well, once again, Democrats demonstrated in the Senate this week they are not taking the message. Let's get a traffic update. I'm Nick Reed. There's been a lot of, some discussion, interestingly enough, I think mostly amongst conservatives, as to what it is that Democrats are going to do in terms of the next presidential election. And, it's Gavin Newsom is just so painfully obvious that he's so thirsty when it comes to wanting to run. I would think it would be off-putting to even Democrats, but I don't know. The announcement from Cuomo yesterday that he's running for mayor is understood that that's just his launching pad to get national attention because he's going to run for president. You have talk, Tim Walz announced that he may run. All right. Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, whom everyone recognized would have been the best pick for Kamala Harris, but his problem is anti-Semitism in the Democrat. I'd just love to see him as a Jewish person running the Democrat Party. Oh, boy. That'll be a real hum. I suspect Democrats will, honestly, try and talk him into not running simply because they know how some of their own voters will react, and it will further demonstrate to the American people how extremely anti-Semitic people are within their own political party. This is really what it boils down to. Logistically, in terms of what the problem that Democrats have. When you run in a primary, for example, Republicans, when they run in the primary, they become more conservative, right? Particularly in certain parts of the country. Republican primaries, they're all conservative. Democrats do the opposite. This is how they continue to get themselves in trouble. This is how it was that you had Kamala Harris running around, where there was video of her using campaign ads talking about how taxpayers should pay for sex change operations for people who come into our country illegally and then commit crimes and go to prison. It's because they sit down with these left-wing interviewers or podcasters, and they get asked these most extreme situations and scenarios, and they don't want to say no. I can't remember the last time that a Democrat running in a primary was sitting down doing an interview with some left-wing outfit and ask, well, will you support this extreme left-wing thing? And they say, you know what, actually, I think that that's not the right direction for the Democrat Party. I can't remember the last time. They used to do that to some degree. And so they cater to the left because they recognize how significant the extreme radical left is to their party. And in order to win a primary, they can't, that's their approach, is we can't alienate them. They are the activists. They're the ones that get out there and scream and yell. And we don't want them showing up at our events and screaming and yelling about how we're a traitor and we're just as bad as Donald Trump and we're Hitler. And so whatever it is that we have to cater to them. Well, then they've put that stake down, and here comes the general election, and they're extreme leftists. The solution is one that this third way presented them with over the past weekend, and that is you have got to write those people off. Unfortunately for them, the calculation is, and this has been demonstrated to some degree to be true, they have to have them to win the nomination. Unless they do, of course, what they did last time and they overthrow the nomination of the person who actually won and then let the donors, pick whomever it is that they want to be the nominee, which Democrats have signaled as voters that they're perfectly fine with their elections being overthrown and just being told this is the person you're going to support. Until, of course, it doesn't work out, and then they complain and gripe about it. So maybe Democrats will honestly get to the point that they just cancel their primaries and their caucuses and say, as a party, we're just going to choose, and then we'll have delegates at the convention. I mean, that's the way it used to be done. And that could be the problem there, though, I mean, look at the people they chose for the DNC. David Hogg is the vice chair. So the nut jobs have even infiltrated the DNC. I'm telling you, the Democrats as a party, they have really backed themselves into a horrific corner. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed. Pineapple Life Coach, infused with the exotic essence of ripe pineapples. And it's not overly hoppy. Sometimes those pineapple beers, it's a good, that sort of juicy, balance between the pineapple and the hops is something that is common with pineapple beers. But in my tasting of the Pineapple Life Coaches that I've had, more than one, I should say, is much less hoppier. So if you're somebody that likes the idea of having something a little, lighter and more tropical, but you don't like the hoppiness, this may be one for you to try. And of course, as always, Bradford Light as well. A beer that speaks to the dedications of the hands that built the heartland, Washington, Kansas. I recommend you check out their site, in fact, at KansasTerritoryBrewingCo.com. You can learn more about them. And to pick up your Bradford Light or Pineapple Life Coach, stop by area Price Cutters or some area Macadoodles, and you can find them there. There is a huge new study that has come out regarding transgender surgeries and how it doesn't simply increase but actually doubles depression rates. Anyone who understands human nature knows that this was to come. Transgender surgery raises the rate of depression, suicidal impulses, anxiety, and drug addiction, a huge new study says. Now, don't misunderstand what they find here to be the conclusion. You would think that means, we should stop this. No. The study's authors conclude that the government should just spend more money trying to make them less depressed. So create the problem, and then we'll try and fix it instead of trying to prevent the problem from occurring in the first place. Instead of dealing with the root of the problem, which is what we used to do in this country, it is come up with some fake answer that is irreversible, which, of course, naturally is going to lead to greater depression. And then we'll work on trying to get to the source of the problem after that. That's called too little, too late. The study, another blow for transgender activists and friendly judges who insist that transgender medical treatments be funded by taxpayers because the treatments are supposedly life-saving forms of self-expression. The argument is fundamental in the activist fight against current efforts by the federal government and state governments to protect children and youth from transgender advocacy. The study of 107,583 patients posted in the Journal of Sexual Medicine reported that depression doubled among men who underwent transgender surgery. Quote, males with surgery showed a higher prevalence of depression, skyrocketing from 11.5% to 25.4% for those who went through the surgery. Anxiety went from 2.6% to 12.8%, 6 times. Women also suffered additional depression and anxiety, the study said. Females exhibited similar trends, with elevated depression from 14.6% to 22.9%, anxiety going from 7.1% to 10.5%. Men who undergo feminizing procedures, such as having their genitals removed, were more likely to be depressed and to begin using drugs, according to the report. Feminizing individuals demonstrated particularly high risks for depression and substance disorder, according to the findings. Only a small share of men who claim to be transgender ultimately have surgery on their genitals. This is where we see more times than not boys who want to compete against girls in sports. See that? This is what some people call a clue, that they're just doing it in order to win scholarships or because they're narcissistic, is that they don't actually do anything that would be permanent in terms of transitioning. There was a similar study funded by the National Institute of Health that was released in May of 2024. That study noted people who undergo gender-affirming surgery experience a 12.12% rise in the risk of suicide attempts. That was a federal study of 1,500 cases over 20 years. This, of course, defies what it is that those people who want to lure children into these surgeries tell these children and tell their parents. Can you imagine any other procedure or medication that does the opposite, but the people who are doling it out tells you that, no, this is going to help you when it actually makes you sicker? And then stick with it when the studies come out showing the truth. How many of these studies is it going to take? How many of these people that get coaxed into believing that forever, in an irreversible way, changing their bodies is the answer, only to find out it isn't, so then they commit suicide? How many is it going to take? Is there a number? I think some people need to do a self-check here. If you are somebody who has sympathies for or even are an activist when it comes to this particular issue, and you learn about these studies, and again, this is over 107,000 patients, and this is a journal of sexual medicine. This isn't some online survey done by an anti-trans organization. When you see a study like this, if your first instinct is, oh, wait a minute, this does not sound good, we may need to put a halt to this until at the very least we do more studies, then that means you actually care about these kids. If your reaction is to ignore it, to try and figure out some way to pretend that you can't believe this study, that this isn't legitimate, then your priority is not the kids. It's your movement. This isn't, this is just human basic understanding of human beings. As best as one can to try to put oneself in someone else's shoes, what we do know is that there is a tremendously high number, particularly females, that are victims of sexual assault. Also autism, kids that have autism are targeted by this movement as well. And they get told that the reason that they don't fit in, the reason that they feel uncomfortable with their own body, that is particularly the case with girls who have been sexually assaulted, that it's because they're trapped in the wrong body and they're transgender. They get falsely told that if they don't get treatment, it will increase, and by treatment I mean a sex change operation, it will increase the likelihood that they will commit suicide and be depressed and have substance abuse issues, when the studies show that it's exactly the opposite. And that makes sense that it's the opposite. If you're told you're already struggling with depression because of a sexual assault, for example, and you get convinced by people you trust that going through body altering, chemicals being pumped in your body, having these surgeries that you have to maintain on a daily basis in some instances, only to find out that it didn't make you feel better, yeah, you're going to be even more depressed. It doesn't really take a study to figure that out, but we do have the studies now to prove it. And when these studies, you look at this, you look at the Democrat Party all in unison voting against girls being forced to compete against boys, who largely use it as a way to get scholarships and to be more successful in athletics than they are against their own gender. It just really comes into focus how little compassion these people have. They may think that they do. But like I said, it's a gut check. If your first instinct whenever you see a study like this is, oh my gosh, we need to put a halt to this. This is something that is very concerning. Then your priority is the kid. If that's not your first instinct, it is just to tell yourself that you can't trust this study or to ignore it just to move along, your priority is not the kids, and it's not transgenders. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today it'll be rainy and breezy throughout the day with a high near 60. Tonight rain and then changing over to snow with a low around 30. For your Wednesday, we'll see a 50% chance of snow before 8 a.m. and then mostly sunny with a high near 40. And looking ahead to Thursday, partly sunny skies with a high near 51.
We have a happy hour on Friday. If you'd like to come by and join us, we will be at Retro Metro, and we're checking on whether or not we'll be able to have a pair of tickets for you to sign up for. We got an update on that?
We will.
All right. I suspected we would. 2 ways for you to register. This is the upcoming Sticks with special guest Kevin Cronin of REO Speedwagon live at Thunder Ridge Nature Arena Saturday, June 7th. You can go to ksgf.com, register that way, or stop by Friday between 4 and 6 at Retro Metro, and we will register you that way. Couple of ways to win. State lawmaker files House bill to repeal same-sex marriage ban in Missouri. Okay, so let me read this story to you and then give you some thoughts. And this isn't a throwback. I thought people were gay and married in Missouri, but State Representative Wick Thomas introduced a House bill that aims to repeal the same-sex marriage ban in the state of Missouri. House Bill 1459 seeks to eliminate provisional language that defines marriage exclusively as a union between a man and a woman. According to the bill, its purpose is to ensure that all couples, regardless of gender, are granted equal legal recognition. Quote, marriage is a basic human right, and states should not interfere with our personal freedom to choose same-sex marriage, he wrote in a media release. All couples deserve to be recognized and respected by the state. According to the media release, Missouri statutes have provisional language that declares same-sex marriage as invalid, prohibiting marriage licenses from being given to same-sex couples. HB 1459, however, looks to repeal the discriminatory policies establishing that all marriages are valid and deserving of equal protection under the law, saying my marriage to my husband should not be in the hands of politicians. It is past time for Missouri to align its laws with the fundamental values and equality of justice. Now, this has been voted on. This was voted on by people with an amendment forever ago, and like over 70% of Missourians voted to say marriage is between a man and a woman. I find it interesting that all of a sudden democracy doesn't matter when it comes to that issue. That you had judges overturning the will of the people. You notice how that the voice of the people, democracy matters. One person, one vote. That only seems to really count if it goes your way, at least with some people. When it goes the other way, well, we need a judge to step in and overturn this. But the contradiction, and this has, frankly, the Libertarian Party oftentimes demonstrates a contradiction when it comes to this issue. For its part, it says, that, well, marriage should be between a man and a woman, but that's just more government. I don't understand that for a party that's about less government. That if you want equality, if you're arguing in the name of equality, then government should have nothing to do with it whatsoever. Government should stay out of it. Which is what State Representative Wick Thompson says, but then in the exact next sentence, he says the opposite. He argues that marriage is a basic human right and states should not interfere in our personal freedom to choose same-sex marriage. Okay, but then he turns around and he wants to have a law in which government recognizes it. Which can we have some consistency here? You want government out of the bedroom, or you want them to respect your choice in the bedroom? Do you want government to keep out of your marriage? Or do you need government to validate your marriage? I just, the inconsistencies and the contradictions we hear so often from these people, it just drives me a little bit nutty. If you are arguing that marriage is a basic human right, then state government or government on any level shouldn't be involved at all. Because a basic human right cannot require the labor of another individual. It can't. If it does, then it's no longer a basic human right because you are requiring somebody else to do something that may or may not be, against their will. If it's a human right, you don't need somebody else to be doing something for you. So arguing that marriage is a basic human right, but then arguing that government must approve of it and validate it is a contradiction. If you believe marriage is a human right, then you would believe that, yeah, marry whoever you want, but government has nothing to do with it. You don't need their validation. You don't need their approval. But then again, to argue that, well, you don't need politicians. Politicians need to stay out of my marriage. Now, by the way, I'm going to ask all of you politicians to vote for this. I'm going to debate in Jeff City my legislation and tell you why it is that every one of you politicians should support this thing that I say politicians should stay out of. That makes perfect sense, doesn't it? It's Jeff City. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Ex-MSNBC host Joy Reid went on anti-Semitic rant blaming Jews for COVID, according to former staffers. This is no surprise. It's MSNBC. These are left-wingers. It is the home of anti-Semitic. I mean, look at Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton has a home at MSNBC. He's unapologetically anti-Semitic. He led riots in New York that resulted in the deaths of Jews. So I mean, this should be no surprise. Former MSNBC host Joy Reid went on, quote, a vile anti-Semitic rant in which she blamed Jews for the spread of COVID-19 in New York City, a former production assistant at the network claims. I mean, the accusation isn't funny, but just the absurdity of this network filling itself with hosts that try to portray Elon Musk as doing a Hitler salute when they paid hosts who went around blaming the Jews for COVID. In the summer of 2020, the lefty former Read Out host ripped Orthodox Jews, saying they, quote, only care about themselves and are in their own bubble, and accused the group of reckless behavior during the pandemic, according to the personal assistant. The XPA, who spoke on condition of anonymity, said she's speaking out now that Reid has been axed because people should know what her character is. Well, that would have been helpful when she actually was a host of MSNBC. But again, it's not like they don't know this stuff. Oh, in fact, we'll get to that part. The former staffer noted that Reid said unchallenged during a morning conference call at work. This is a conference call at work. Talking about the Jews, they're the reason why COVID is spreading across New York. They don't care about COVID or spreading it to others. And not a single person on the conference call said, hey, yeah, no, I don't know that you can believe that, but maybe not work-appropriate conversation. The XPA, who her or himself is Jewish, said, I was shocked she called out a group and generalized them. Said it was even more shocking that the other people on the call went along with it as if it was a normal thing to say. Well, in those circles it is. It's still amazing to me that people find it shocking that within tightly knit Democrat circles, these are the conversations that happen. Do we not remember the behavior of Democrat activists on college campuses? Or the testimony of the people who ran these universities claiming that it didn't violate their personal standards to call for the extermination of Jews. That was testimony in Congress. Well, it doesn't violate our personal standards, no. That we qualify as freedom of speech. Now, if you fat shame someone, we'll boot them off campus. The person who triggers because, yeah, we believe in body positivity, but you just call for all Jews to be wiped off the planet. Well, that's just your belief system. This is how they believe. According to the PA, there were about 20 people on that call. Quote, no one called her out saying maybe we shouldn't generalize. Imagine if you said that about any other group of people, even if it were true, saying that any other group didn't care about COVID. I remember feeling shocked by her ignorance and how anti-Semitic it sounded. It didn't just sound anti-Semitic, it's pretty on point. The source, who felt too intimidated as a young staffer to speak out at the meeting, sent a Slack message later that day to her boss, then senior producer Lorena Ruiz. In the messages shared this week with the Post, she expressed her deep concern over the 100% anti-Semitic comments. She asked her boss to consider collective responsibility, since many Orthodox Jews were part of the many doctors creating the COVID guidelines and restrictions and risking their lives every day to treat COVID patients, which it's a shame at MSNBC that as a Jewish employee, she felt she had to rationalize why it was that blaming Jews for COVID was something that wasn't workplace appropriate. Like she had to say, no, actually, we're doing. You shouldn't even have to feel as if you need to justify the existence of your people. Her boss at MSNBC replied to the staffer that she had a good point, noting that Joy can be careless with her language. Luckily, she's generally better on air than on calls, before she thanked the junior staffer for bringing it up, according to a copy of messages viewed by the Post. So that was the attitude of the folks that run MSNBC. Well, she's not sharing her anti-Semitism like that on air. So what's the big deal? This is, as usual, not surprising that such openly anti-Semitic behavior is something that's considered acceptable at MSNBC. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, your first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today it'll be rainy and breezy throughout the day with a high near 60. Tonight rain and then switching over to snow with a low around 30. For your Wednesday, we'll see a 50% chance of snow before 8 a.m. and then mostly sunny with a high near 40. And looking ahead to Thursday, we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 51.
So I mentioned earlier that over the past weekend, the Democrats had this sort of retreat to try to figure out how it was that they could, well, one, regain power, but keep legitimacy, as they are so out of step on a number of issues with the American people. Even 2/3 of Democrats are against this transgender stuff. And the whole weekend was about how, you guys, we got to stay away from the crazies if we want to win elections. But then they turn around and vote lockstep, forcing girls to compete against boys in the U.S. Senate. And I mentioned part of the problem that they have is in the primary system or the caucus system, and they never want to tell a lefty, no matter how extreme they are, no, during the primaries, because they're afraid then they won't win the primary. and that just pulls them further and further to the left. And at the same time, the loudest people within the Democrat Party are the crazies. And they're the ones that the networks, ironically, that desperately want to return power to the Democrats, the mainstream media networks, are the ones that continue to give a platform to the crazies that the average American, even including some Democrats, look at and go, if that is they're the extreme ones, clearly extreme. One of those people that the media has taken to giving airtime to is Jasmine Crockett, and she's a nut. Here she is talking about Donald Trump yesterday on one of the networks.
Unfortunately, we have someone that is occupying the White House, and as far as I'm concerned, he is an enemy to the United States. He swore an oath just like the rest of us. But right now, when you are literally putting us at risk, all because of what? Because you want to convince your followers that you should be a dictator too, that you should never leave the White House because you don't believe that elections should take place. I don't really understand what is going on, and I don't know what it's going to take to get people to wake up.
A couple of thoughts. The first one, when she talked about Trump being an enemy of the people, this is further fuel for people who may want to assassinate Donald Trump. They are not taking their foot off the gas pedal on this one. I remembered, by the way, when she made those comments, I think it was with Andrea Mitchell, not challenged at all. I remember when Trump talked about people that were trying to undermine the United States and referring to them as an enemy within the United States. How nuts they went. This is when they started talking about concentration camps. You had some Democrat members of Congress claiming that because Trump used the term enemy within, he was going to round them up and put them in concentration camps. I believe Debbie Dingell was one of those individuals that made that claim. I just grabbed a few random headlines from the way that the media behaved whenever Trump made those comments, and they read as follows. Politico, or PolitiFact rather, Trump is talking more about the enemy from within. AP, who does Trump see as the enemy from within? NBC, Trump doubles down on calling Democrats enemies from within. The enemy from within, Trump calls Democrats more dangerous than major foreign adversaries. PBS, taxpayer funded. Trump suggests he'll use the military on the enemy from within. Same thing from CNN. 9news.com, wherever that is. What we can verify about Trump's enemy within remark. And this was during the campaign. This was further proof that he was a dictator, because only dictators would say such a thing. Unless, of course, you're this nut job and you're a Democrat, then you're allowed to say it all you want. We hear a lot of this discussion. This is the other thing, that the gaslighting, if you want to look at it as that, though I don't know that Crockett has a level of intelligence to gaslight. Claiming that the reason that Trump, and we hear this in the context of Zelensky, that the reason that he just acts that way is he just trying to serve his MAGA base and people who, think that he shouldn't have to worry about running for office again. He just cancel elections. That's Zelensky that you are talking about. When they try and list the offenses that they claim make Donald Trump a dictator, these are things that Zelensky has done. And the kicker is they are using it in the context of Zelensky and dealing with Ukraine. I want to share with you from the Federalist, because I know a lot of people don't realize exactly what Zelensky has done. Ukraine is not a free country. And by the way, that began before full-blown war broke out. Zelensky over time has banned political opposition, like the entire political parties. He has banned networks, consolidating them into one government-run network. What mature people understand is simply recognizing that doesn't mean that you're a fan of Putin. It's pretty amazing for all the talk about a puppet of Putin that we hear from the left. I've yet to hear anyone claim that Putin isn't, a bad guy. They may explain why it is that Putin has said that he did what he did, so that we all have context as to what each side, how they view this conflict. But I hear people left and right all the time acting as Zelensky is some hero of democracy. He just isn't. Sometimes when two people are battling it out militarily, both sides are bad guys. It doesn't mean that one side was right or that, one side wasn't right or wrong when it comes to what they did. But it doesn't, even if you look at Zelensky, you look at Ukraine, and you're like, yeah, Putin should not have invaded Ukraine. If that's the stance that you take, that doesn't mean that Zelensky is a good guy. This is a piece from a couple of years ago. So it's well before things have gotten to the level that they are now. Ukrainian President Zelensky has been lionized by the Western press since the start of Russia's invasion. But in the not-so-distant past, many international human rights organizations and concerned Ukrainians were sounding the alarm on dangerous and anti-democratic patterns of behavior exhibited by the president. Now, this is important because, again, this is before the height of everything, and we're talking about human rights organizations. We're talking about citizens in Ukraine that were like, hey, this Zelensky guy, no, y'all aren't paying a whole lot of attention necessarily to what's going on over here, but he's kind of a dictator. On February 2nd, 2021, Zelensky enacted sanctions on 3 television stations believed to be affiliated with Viktor Medvedchuk, a leader of the opposition Bloc Party who is a critic of Zelensky. He was also a duly elected member of parliament. The channels were immediately taken off air, including News One, which had called Zelensky narrow-minded and quoted Medvedchuk criticizing the president for reneging on his campaign promise of finding a peaceful solution to the conflicts in eastern Ukraine. Zelensky also sanctioned the air travel company used by Medvedchuk and pressured American social media companies such as YouTube to deactivate the accounts of Medvedchuk-affiliated companies, which it ultimately did. Justified by Medvedchuk's ties to Russia, these actions were nonetheless widely condemned by international, European, and Ukrainian non-governmental human rights organizations. Free press advocates, such as the International and European Federation of Journalists, who collectively represent hundreds of thousands of journalists across 140 countries, jointly denounced Zelensky's decree, calling it, quote, an extrajudicial and politically motivated ban and a blatant attack on press freedom that must be urgently reversed. A division within the United Nations released a statement declaring that the decision had not been made by an impartial authority and it lacked proper justification and proportion. The National Union of Journalists of Ukraine, a group that has repeatedly condemned Russia for its invasion of Ukraine, openly criticized the sanctions, quote, depriving Ukrainian citizens of access to media without a prior trial and banning hundreds of journalists and media outlets of their right to work is an attack on freedom of speech. Is this what, when you say I stand with Ukraine, is this what some of you are talking about? Medvedchuk, still a sitting member of parliament at the time, attempted to create a new media organization called First Independent. Zelensky dissolved that outlet a few months later. Gross negligence on the part of Ukrainian law enforcement in addressing retaliation against journalists also became a central issue internationally and was even flagged by U.S. intelligence agencies. A 2021 U.S. State Department report on Ukraine blames Zelensky's government inaction in solving crimes for the emergence of a culture of impunity. That would be under Biden, by the way. Government authorities sometimes participated in and condoned attacks on journalists. The report went on, citing allegations that the government itself prosecuted journalists in retaliation for their work. We're going to take a quick break and continue on. And some of this, again, this isn't in the heat of the war as it stands today. Zelensky has long demonstrated a history of shutting down political opposition and imprisoning journalists and banning political opposition, not to mention canceling elections. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed.
Oh.
Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you, the Pyramid Roofing Company. Spring will be here soon, and with spring comes severe weather, the rain, the wind, the hail. And if your roof is not ready for severe weather season, no worries, because I have a solution for you, and that solution is the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they offer free roof inspections where they check everything from your ventilation to your attic and decking. They also offer discounts on new roof installs for our military and our first responders, and they work through that insurance process with you without making you sign anything. And not all roofing companies do that, by the way. So if it is time to get ahead of severe weather season and get that health checkup on your roof, go ahead and give Josh a call today and schedule that free roof inspection. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company at pyramidroofingmo.com or under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
People can, I think, accurately describe Zelensky as a defender of Ukraine. Labeling him a defender of freedom, a defender of democracy, a defender of liberty, that is not true by the facts. And noting the reality about Zelensky does not mean you're in favor of Putin. You can recognize that there's more than one bad guy in the world when it comes to people's liberties and freedoms. There's not just one in the world. And in the last segment, I was reading to you that, just back in 2021, how he was banning media outlets that were critical of him. He was, shutting down businesses of political opposition. It got to the point where you had the National Union of Journalists and the United Nations and International and European Federation of Journalists that were all condemning Zelensky as being against freedom of the press and a danger to freedom. Now, the reason it's important this was happening in 2021, because the invasion of Ukraine was February of 2022. So this isn't in the heat of war. Ignoring the international backlash, in August of 2021, Zelensky passed broad sanctions against various digital media publications, yet again without any parliamentary involvement. Strana, one of Ukraine's largest outlets at the time, with 24 million visits per month, was a primary target of his sanctions. After its primary website address, strana.ua, was cut off, the outlet was forced onto another domain, strana.news, which is still forbidden in Ukraine under Zelensky. Strana's viewership dropped by more than 94%. Human rights organizations once again found the justification of it being pro-Russia ties uncompelling. The journalistic freedom cohorts, IFJ, EFJ, and NUJU, issued a shared statement calling the decree an extrajudicial action and lambasted it as a threat to press freedom and media pluralism in the country. noting that Strana.ua is one of the few remaining opposition media in Ukraine. Freedom House, an American pro-democracy nonprofit once chaired by Eleanor Roosevelt, urged President Biden to take a stronger stance against Zelensky's actions. Quote, Zelensky continues to use executive power without any judicial review to sanction media outlets, sanction tech platforms, sanction journalists, and sanction websites under the pretext of fighting disinformation. Gee, it's kind of amazing when you hear what it was he was doing over there and what it was the Biden administration was doing here. Perhaps the most interesting target of the August 2021 sanctions was Anatoly Shary, a Kiev-born journalist and blogger with a devoted Ukrainian fan base who founded a political party in his name in 2019. The party of Shary performed relatively well in some localities during Ukraine's 2020 national elections, with several candidates attaining office at the city and regional levels. The party of Shary was among several political parties disbanded by Zelensky's presidential decree at the start of Russia's war, a decision upheld by Ukraine's Supreme Court without any opportunity for appeal. A UN-affiliated organization investigated Zelensky's sanctions against Shary and concluded that Shary is misportrayed by the authorities as a journalist being pro-Kremlin, pro-Putin, and pro-Russian Federation. In response to being painted as a Russian sympathizer, Shary said the Ukrainian government comfortably uses such labels against anyone who expresses any criticism. I have the right to criticize the corruption of the president and the government. A local perspective on Zelensky's press relations is provided by a Ukrainian outlet now familiar to many Westerners, the Kiev Independent, whose Twitter followers rocketed from just 11,400 following a few weeks before the invasion to more than 2.2 million as it provided English speakers around the world with live war updates. Having been celebrated in Forbes earlier that year for its reports on Russia war crimes and op-eds calling for Western sanctions against Russia, it's difficult to portray that outlet as being pro-Kremlin. Before the invasion in January of 22, the Kiev Independent published a piece titled How Zelensky's Administration Moves to Dismantle Press Freedom in Ukraine, again, before the invasion. They wrote, the past 4 months have seen a surge of attempts to control the media, the Kiev Independent reported, highlighting the government's pattern of behavior characterized by threats of criminal prosecution against media outlets and journalists. Condensing the Zelensky presidency in a single sentence, the author wrote, quote, instead of improving its dialogue with the press, Zelensky's government decided to take a more direct route, amplify supporters, and pressure critics into silence. Given the stakes of U.S. involvement in the Russian-Ukraine conflict, we should consider the image of Zelensky portrayed not only by numerous human rights groups, but by his own citizens, and compare this to the version pushed by Western media. We should also reconsider our continued support for Zelensky in an environment in which rogue missiles land in Poland and blame is tossed around in a hysterical frenzy. Nuclear war is a real possibility. Now, this piece was from 2022 itself, so it's several years old, which is all the reason it's more noteworthy. That before all of this, so you can't couch it as, well, he had no choice because the war with Russia. The crackdown on the press, the punishment of journalists, the international condemnation, the banning of political parties that were opposition to him were well before the invasion took place. Yes, a defender of Ukraine he may be, but a defender of freedom and liberty he certainly is not. And all the finger pointing at Trump as concessions to Putin, Europe is funding Russia's invasion of Ukraine through their purchases of fuel. In fact, there's a piece with the number breakdown in Just the News that the fuel revenues, since all these massive sanctions were put into place that was going to cripple the Russian economy, only decreased by 8%. They're still hand over fist getting money from Europe. Europe is funding both sides of this thing. So if we want to point fingers at who really is a sympathizer of Putin's, look at the numbers. Glenn Beck's next. I'm Nick Reed.